Introducing Future Back Drinking, a new podcast series from PepsiCo and Time. Each week, PepsiCo's Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer, Dr. Athina Kanioura, hosts conversations with industry pioneers to illuminate the technologies and trends that will redefine our tomorrow. Hear from top-tier visionaries as they uncover the challenges, opportunities, and wow moments in today's fast-paced world. Future Back Drinking isn't just a podcast. It's a journey through the now into the next, served with a twist. Join Dr. Kanioura for an exploration of what our future holds. Coming soon to all your favorite podcast platforms.
Welcome to Future Back Drinking, brought to you by PepsiCo and Time. I'm your host, Dr. Athina Kanioura, and as PepsiCo CEO of Latin America and Global Strategy and Transformation Officer, I believe it's incredibly important to speak with today's industry leaders about the technologies, innovations, and ideas that are certain to impact all of us. Future Back Drinking is not just a podcast, it's a journey through the now into the next. And joining me is my co-host Priyanka Ribindi. Hello, Priyanka.
Great to see you again, Athina. Over the course of our season of Future Back Drinking, we have spent a lot of time talking about innovations in technology and the future of work, but I'm very excited today because we are digging into a very specific application of this technology, robotics and their place in the world and workplaces of the future. We have a really incredible guest for everyone today, but before we get into our conversation with her, I want to hear a little bit more from you, Athina, as you're leading transformation at a major corporation. I imagine robotics and the physical manifestations of AI are among the many things that are top of mind for you right now. So how are you thinking about this at PepsiCo?
Absolutely. Robotics for us is a key pillar of the transformation of our supply chain. And we look at it from the lens of both our manufacturing sites, our plants, but also our logistics operations, our warehouses, DCs, mixing centers, and of course, our fleet and transportation. It's everything from what we call intelligent automation that can help actually bridge a gap where employees don't want to do a task, and therefore robots are extremely useful, especially for heavy-duty tasks in the facilities, all the way to intelligent robots and physical AI, so AI incorporated in the robots in the form of humanoids, where we are actually thinking of what could be this human-machine collaboration in the future, where it will allow the human to truly focus on the strategic elements of supply chain and operations, and the robot managing the day-to-day operations in a highly industrialized, scalable, and efficient way. So for us, this is a major priority. We are in the middle of the journey, and we are very excited.
Yeah, I just imagine from your perspective, you're really on the precipice of totally transforming the human-robot collaboration.
It's very exciting, and for our people, this is a moment where they truly want to see what the future will bring in terms of making their job even better, more interesting, more strategic, much more holistic. So, no, very exciting times for the company and for our operations teams.
Definitely. And we are both very excited to dig into this further today. Very innovative, undeniably fascinating. And here today to share all of her insights on the future of robotics is our guest, Peggy Johnson.
Peggy Johnson is the CEO of Agility Robotics, pioneering humanoid robots designed to work safely alongside people in warehouses, factories, and other real-world environments. She previously spent more than 2 decades at Qualcomm in engineering, sales, and business development leadership roles, and later served as Executive Vice President of Business Development at Microsoft. Peggy is a consistent voice on scaling innovation responsibly and leading through technological change with a long-term perspective. Here is our conversation. Hi, Peggy. Thank you so much for joining us today. We like to start things off with a quick cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Excited to have you.
This is going to be fun.
Peggy, Agility Robotics was founded with the goal of helping people and companies to do so much more via robots. And you always say the potential of robotics is the same like Industrial Revolution. So can you explain a bit more your goals and your philosophy?
Our vision is to augment humans and to help them offload very manual tasks that can be repetitive and boring and sometimes injury-prone. So the first robots that we are focused on are more industrial looking. So they'll do sort of the heavy lifting inside of warehouses, logistics facilities, manufacturing areas. And then eventually over time, over several years, we will look to enter the homes. And I think that's where the fun really begins. And we get to have our home robot to offload tasks to.
Wow. We've been talking a lot offline about how we've spoken so much about AI and its applications, but this is our first conversation about physical AI. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about the challenges here. Obviously, building is one, but can you speak to the challenges of getting something like this to scale and some of the advantages that allowed you and Agility to be the ones to do this?
Sure. So the company's been around for quite some time, over 10 years. And over that period of time, they developed this humanoid robot. And kind of interestingly, they started with our founder is an expert in locomotion. So the very first robot just had 2 legs and hips, and that was it. And they focused on getting that stable and having it initially walk, and then it ran a 5K race. And so they showed the ability to have what's called a device being dynamically stable, where it's always trying to ensure that it doesn't fall over. So it's dynamically adjusting its position so it continues to stand up, just like we do. When we're standing up, we're always making these minor adjustments. And so that's where it started. And then over time, they added more of a torso and the 2 arms and a head. And so today they have that humanoid form. And we like to say it's human-centric and not really a facsimile of humans, because when we put it to work, as it turns out, it doesn't always mean that you'll get the most lift out of something if you just replicated a human. So we want these robots to step into areas that humans have generally been working, where we want to offload those kind of repetitive tasks. And so they need to be not much wider and not much taller than humans, because the world is built for the human form. But they also need to do real work. So you'll see that our robot's legs go backwards, because when Digit was initially bending down, the knees would get in the way of Digit's ability to lift things from the floor up. So it doesn't need to be a facsimile of humans. It definitely is human-centric, has been our vision since the start. And I would say one of the advantages we have, interestingly, is that we had a dynamically stable robot before AI ever hit the scenes in November of 2022. And that allowed us to deploy robots to start gathering data. And so now we have real-world operating data that we can feed into the AI models. And that's given us a bit of an advantage from the other competitors.
Peggy, just to follow up on Priyanka's question, as you are thinking about the use of AI in terms of collaborating with humans and the operating environment that both humans and the humanoids work, what is the role of intelligence in that, both in terms of both the space and the dimensionality of the space, but actually the task that comes with that?
So you want the robot to be general purpose, first of all. There's robots that do one thing. You've seen the single-arm robots that'll lift a chip and place a small component onto a board, that sort of thing. But humanoids are meant to be general purpose. And so they can do one job in the morning and a different job in the afternoon, just like humans. And so with AI, you have the ability to give the robot a command, and it's kind of magical to watch. It's truly the embodiment of AI when the robot accepts the command and then executes on that. So you see a physical device who can follow instructions. Now, generally in our current environments, we don't give a voice command to the robot because our current environments tend to be noisy warehouses and logistics facilities, manufacturing facilities. It's much easier for a computer to send a command in. Now, the computer may say, stack all the boxes from the pallet onto the conveyor belt, and just do that over and over again until there's no more boxes. The AI that the robot is using is helping it understand its environment. Where are those boxes? Where's the pallet? Where's the conveyor belt? And that is the part that continues to get better and better as our AI models get better. So the reasoning side of things is very much accelerated with AI. In the past, we used to have an engineer write a program that told the robot what to do. But as you can imagine, with AI, it's much more efficient to send a command in that way and have the AI model reason, check the environment, and figure out how to perform on that task. So it's really accelerated our skills building for Digit.
I think the way that you describe your ability to not have it be a carbon copy of a human, the knees go the other way. It's like mimicking evolution on both sides, but in a way that humans wouldn't evolve. It's very interesting to hear how that innovates and so much faster than human evolution.
Yeah. For instance, one of the cues that our founders took was from how birds walk and run, and birds' legs are backwards. In fact, people call Digit's legs bird legs because that's what they look like. But the way that birds evolved, when they bend down, obviously their knees point backwards and they have more range of motion. And so that worked for us in our initial designs because it meant we didn't have to accommodate for the knees bumping into the box that Digit was trying to pick up from the floor and then reaching overhead and putting it on a shelf that might be 5 feet high. And there's a few other things, for instance, 5-finger hands. A lot of folks think, well, where's the hand? If you look at Digit, it's more of a claw hand. And they say, well, why don't you have 5 fingers? Turns out you don't really need 5 fingers for most tasks. In fact, we've never had a single customer say, can you put a 5-finger hand on Digit? We have the ability to do so because we have a sort of a standard flange at the end of the arm. And there's been 5-finger hands in the industry for decades. They do piece picking and things. But for the type of work that Digit's doing, it turns out right now, a claw hand is better. It's better for balancing. It's better for the type of weight you're picking up. And so if someday we do have a customer who wants 5 fingers, well, we can do it. But so far, we haven't. And even when you think about your daily life, you use your hands much like a gripper for most things, picking up your coffee cup and things. So the opportunity is there, but so far we haven't found the task that needs it.
I want to just really quickly, before we move on, ask you, we've been zooming in kind of on the specifics here, but I want to zoom out and ask you, ideally, what this human-robot collaboration looks like to you in the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's what our audience, most people are curious, anxious, maybe fearful, but I think that's what they would love to know.
Everybody's seen the movies, and so many times that's your definition of a robot. And whether you've seen the scary movies or the ones where they're helping us, everybody has sort of an expectation, an image of what a robot coming into their lives for real is going to mean. I will tell you, we are in the early days of humanoids. It's why we chose to focus on these simple, very manual tasks, because there was a great need. Those jobs go unfilled. There's over 1 million of those jobs open across the U.S. and even more around the world. People don't see themselves, their career being centered around lifting boxes over and over again. They want to see an upwardly mobile path. So we started there because there was a great demand. But the other reason is there's a high safety bar. You do see a lot of robots doing demos, emptying dishwashers and loading clothes. We'd all love that. But in order for a humanoid to be around a human, they have to meet a pretty high safety bar because these are big devices. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of range of motion. There's narrow hallways in homes. There's dogs and babies and toys on the floor. It's a changing, dynamic environment, a very chaotic environment. So coming into our homes is going to take some time. However, we can learn a whole lot by deploying in the more disciplined environments now that are in factories and warehouses. And still today, robots like Digit have to operate inside a work cell. So if you see any videos of Digit, you'll see a sort of a waist-high gate around the area where it's operating. Because right now, if you go into a factory and there's a moving mechanical arm, there's a tape on the floor that says, don't get close to this. And it's the same with robots right now. We have been working on something called cooperatively safe robots. This is the next evolution. And it means that our robot, a humanoid robot, can operate in close proximity to humans. So if the task is go down to the loading dock and pick up a box and bring it back here, the humanoid can start on its merry way down to the loading dock, But if a human coming the other way starts to get too close to it, it has to first recognize that's a human. That's where AI helps. And then take action to ensure that it does not harm the human as the human gets closer and closer and closer to the robot. So we have figured out how to do that. Very difficult to do with a dynamically stable robot, much easier to do with, say, a robot on wheels. There's less range of motion, but we figured that out. Well, we're going to bring that out early next year to the market. And then Digit can come outside the work cell, and that will open up a whole variety of new use cases that we can pursue. But it's also the beginnings of getting into the home over the longer term, because as you can imagine, you really need to be able to operate in very close proximity. That's called being collaboratively safe. So then, and in that world, you might hand the robot something and you're touching the robot, and there's an even higher bar to meet being collaboratively safe. So we'll start with being cooperatively safe and eventually get to the second bar over time.
Peggy, as you know, PepsiCo is one of the biggest manufacturers in the world, and we have thousands of warehouses in DCs. So if you were to think the evolution of the sector, to your point, these collaborative robots work with the humans, have you done any analysis on what the reception of the people or the reception of the employees would be? Then what do you think it would mean for the future of manufacturing?
I think because of the movies everyone's seen, there's a lot of concern about these devices coming into our life. And that's understandable. If you've seen a lot of robot movies, they don't always end well. So when we look at it, and again, the area that we chose to focus on was this area of great labor shortage. The million jobs that I defined a little bit earlier, described, is actually just in manufacturing, logistics, warehouse type of facilities. There's other areas that are just as manual that are very, very hard to fill. I think more and more people, when they see their career, they don't see themselves in a job like that. The same thing's happening with sort of even highly skilled manufacturing jobs. Younger people are not attracted to those jobs, and so they tend to have constant and growing labor shortages. So robots can fill in for these very repetitive type of roles that are parts of those jobs, but typically not the whole job. It's sort of the part people don't like. They think, oh, for the next hour, I've got to go load boxes onto a conveyor belt. They'd rather not do that and save cycles for judgment, cooperation, those sorts of things, higher levels, human thinking, and leave the very manual things to the robot. We have talked, as we come into these facilities, oftentimes there's initially some concern, but when they see that, oh, I can offload this part of my job, this task that I don't like, to the robot, it turns out there's actually a great deal of support for the robots. They're far from taking entire jobs because human thinking is still superior, but they are definitely capable of taking those very manual and dull jobs off of humans' hands right now.
Let's talk a bit about autonomy and safety. And in physical environments, the cost of AI mistakes is real, whether it's, again, humanoids or other types of robots or AGVs. So can you walk us through a decision where you deliberately limited autonomy, even though the system could technically do more?
Yes. So we have a safety layer that is built into the robot above which an AI cannot command over. So if the AI is saying, do something, and the robot is deeming that unsafe, we have a safety layer that will prohibit that from happening. And as you can imagine, even in your own use of AI models now, particularly about something that you know a lot about, you ask the question, you're like, well, that's not quite right. That's just text on a computer screen. When you now turn that into actual physical movement that could be dangerous, you have to be able to limit that, or otherwise accidents will ensue. So we will keep that safety layer in place for a long time. It's why we don't believe in the near term robots will be autonomously controlled with AI. We do have autonomous robots. They can operate without AI and we just layer AI in smartly rather than handing it over to the AI and having it control the robot, because at this point in time, that's just not safe yet.
I would love to hear your perspective in general on regulation in this area. We talk a lot about regulation with AI and people's perspective on that, but I would love to hear how you are thinking about that in this field.
So humanoids are so new, there's very little regulation. They fall under what's known as autonomous mobile robots. So they are moving, but they move in ways quite different than wheeled robots. And they have arms and legs that are very powerful. So we, early on in this process, the company, even before I got to the company 2 years ago, was engaged in helping to write regulation around humanoids. So first you have to understand, how powerful are they? How fast can they go? And then layer regulation on top of it to ensure that all humanoids are safe when they're around people. So we've been deeply involved in that in a number of the standards committees and lending our voice and our expertise on humanoids to those committees. And they are evolving. It's progressing slowly, but we're confident a safe and smart regulatory environment will come out the other side of that.
Peggy, let me pivot. You have been working with many companies. You have had leadership roles in many organizations in technology. And now, of course, you are in this space, which is very new, but obviously very, very promising. And it will definitely transform the way we manage work in the future. So what's different now taking the lead role in a company which is fast growing, but in a space that could also be quite controversial?
I grew up in the mobile phone industry. So I was at Qualcomm for 25 years. And I remember when we first started making digital mobile phones, because in the very beginning they were analog, and all they did was make phone calls and literally nothing else. And when we started to layer in digital standards into mobile phones, we frankly had no idea what a mobile phone would become to the world over that period of time. We thought, the sound will be clearer. Digital is better than analog. But actually having computer and now AI in our pockets, we couldn't see that far into the future. I feel a little bit like that about robots. I think right now I can see very clearly how humanoids can help offload those menial manual tasks, but it's hard to see right now how quickly it'll happen into the home because of safety concerns, or where the embodiment AI goes after humanoid robots. I think maybe we have the ability to talk to devices all over our homes and understand any needs they have from sort of repair or maintenance. And I think we can imagine, but it's hard to say exactly where robotics is going to go over time. But this combination of a working device plus AI is very powerful. And I see many ways that it can augment humans going forward. I was talking to a kind of a public security company the other day, and they said, we never want to send a police officer into a dangerous situation again if we don't have to. We would much rather send a robot that a human might be talking through, but they don't have to be the one that steps into a dangerous domestic dispute or a hazardous spill or some kind of a bomb situation. And the idea is eventually anything dangerous, dirty, manual, we can offload to these devices. But I think much like mobile phones, I think we can't even see all of the opportunity ahead. And then, of course, safety comes into play. We need to ensure that they continue to be safe and they're put to use in the right way. And all of that will be another long conversation with companies and how these are used and ensuring that they're used for good. But like any tool, tools often are used for good and they can be used for the other side too. And you have to make sure that, we're staying squarely in the area of helping humans.
Listening to you speak about the potential here and the ability to remove these risky situations from the calculus for a lot of people, that sounds really promising. But on the other hand, of course, there are so many people who hear that and are like, oh, that might be what I do. That's what I'm trained in. I don't don't know anything else, and that scares them. What would you say to people who look at, and maybe a little less so on a factory line doing really repetitive work, but that kind of next step up and the potential there, who are afraid of what that means for what they do?
This particular area, because it involves close interaction with humans, I think is going to evolve much more slowly. We won't get to that collaborative safety for a while. No matter what kind of videos you've seen, that's going to be a ways off. But in the near term, I think people certainly will have those concerns. You're right. I've only been trained in one thing. What happens to me? What we're seeing, though, is new jobs, much like any other big technological disruption. You start to see new jobs come out the other side. Who would have ever guessed that social influencers would be a job? Yet they are. One of the things we're seeing is as we deploy robots, and by the way, the robots talk to other robots and they talk to other automation in a warehouse system, someone has to manage all of that. So there's now jobs that are starting to surface with fleet management of robots in these facilities. And so rather than actually doing the manual work, you're overseeing the robots who are doing the manual work and then ensuring that, if there's an alert over here, I've got to go check it. Oh, red lights come on over there. They're more of an operations oversight manager rather than, actually doing the physical work. Who would have thought a robot manager would be a job? But it is going to be a job in this world as we transition to more of these devices. First, in our work environments and over many years in our home environments. So I think much like other technological evolution, we will see new jobs surface and some jobs will go away. I would say if you've ever seen some of these very manual jobs in action, you would think they should go away. People who do them for long periods of time tend to have back and knee problems, and it's something that it's better for a tool over time than for a human, and free them up to do higher order tasks, which is much more fulfilling for most people.
You have customers, everywhere in the world, obviously in the US, in Latin America. Do you see differences, geographical differences in terms of the adoption of these technologies? I mean, you mentioned some of the regions in terms of workforce shortage, but are there other parameters that allow you to move faster when it comes to deployment in a market versus others?
I would say in more established markets like the US, there's probably more of a need. There's less of a workforce that's available to do those jobs, where in some countries there is more of a workforce. So it's not consistent across the globe. But anywhere over time where there are labor shortages, you can imagine a robot might be helpful in those areas. For instance, healthcare and elder care, that's a topic that comes up a lot with us. Again, we'd have to be collaboratively safe for that to be realized. But we have a lot of elderly people who are living on their own in environments where they can fall, things can happen. And these robots could potentially be very helpful in those situations. So kind of ease of mind for our older population. And I think there's a lot of areas like that over time where the introduction of these robots will be very, very helpful across the board and outside of the US for sure as well.
Okay, now it's time to move on the lightning round.
Okay.
At the end of each episode, we like to ask our guests a series of quick-hitting questions to get to know them on a more personal level. So are you ready for the difficult questions?
I think so. I'm ready.
Okay. What's a widely held belief about robotics that you think it's simply wrong?
Oh, that they'll take people's jobs in the near term. That's just not happening yet.
If you could automate one repetitive task in your own day, what is the first thing you're handing off to a robot?
Oh, probably cooking. I am terrible. I'm just terrible. And that would be a fantastic outcome. Yes.
It's just time consuming.
I love cooking. I just want to say that on record. Okay, what's a lesson from an early tech wave that you find yourself returning to right now?
I think we don't know where robotics will go, just like we didn't know where mobile phones would go. We never could have envisioned the type of power that's in a mobile phone today. More power than was in the first Apollo launch. I just heard that the other day, like by 100 times in our pockets. And I think the same is very much true for robotics.
What is a moment with a robot, digit or otherwise, that genuinely made you say, wow?
Well, we had a reporter in, and we were giving digit commands, and we thought it was kind of cute if you asked digit, how much do you love me? Digit would flash heart eyes because it had heart eyes. Like, it only can do what it's capable of, and it had heart eyes, and so it would flash that. So what I didn't know is someone had swapped out the LLM underneath, and we'd had one group in the morning who was asking that question, and everybody laughs when the heart eyes come up. And I think they'd been using Anthropic's Claude in the morning, and in the afternoon they were using Google Gemini, and they operate slightly differently. So, the reporter said, Digit, how much do you love me? And Digit had just been moving boxes around also on her command. And Digit stops, and we had a screen behind it that had Digit's thought process. So you could see Digit going, okay, I have to say how much I love this human. And it looked at all the boxes that had been stacking, and it put the boxes in the shape of a heart on the floor.
Oh.
And we didn't know it was going to do that. It didn't do any heart eyes. It did that. And it's just like these slight differences in how it interprets commands based on the AI right there. That was a magical moment. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, okay. So it wouldn't be a future back drinking podcast without this question. If you could choose anyone to have a drink with, who would it be and why?
Oh, I'm going to go very close to home. It would be my father. He passed away when I was very young. I was not quite 3. And I had a sister below me, and I had 6 siblings above me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was very tragic. But I always wanted to know, what was he like? Because he's in me, and what traits do I have that he had? And I would just love a conversation with him for just a few minutes to understand a little bit more about where I came from.
Oh, that's very sweet. Peggy, thank you very much for the discussion. This was very enlightening. I think it was also very positive and optimistic about the future of robotics and the human-machine collaboration. For sure, very important for companies like us who are in the middle of this transformation to think of how we should organize ourselves in a way that allows the machines to be part of the operating ecosystem. So thank you. And again, cheers for a great discussion.
Cheers, Athina. Cheers, Priyanka.
That was truly a fascinating conversation, and yet another monumental change that's coming to our workplaces and world so soon. Especially interesting to me because, these humanoid robots are what the books and movies all imagined that the technology of the future to be, rather than us writing in ChatGPT, for example. Like, it's very much what we pictured. So it's cool to hear how this is happening in real time. Athina, I'd love to hear kind of what stood out to you most from our conversation with Peggy.
Obviously, the future is very promising. If you were to think of how companies like us are trying to scale technology in frontiers where humanoids and people can work hand in hand. And I can only imagine the potential in industries like healthcare and so many others where consumer applications of robots can make our life much easier. So a very exciting space, very promising space, both from an industrial application but also consumer application. And I can't wait to see how these humanoids evolve in this collaborative phase in a very safety and responsible way.
Yes, she has me feeling, enthusiastic to see what's to come.
Absolutely. So, thank you all for listening to Future Back Drinking. We truly hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and stay connected with us on all your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, take care.